All right, I want to talk to you about calibration of a radio. Basically, any radio. If you don't know how to calibrate the radio, don't try it. There's a lot of little tricks. All right, now this one I have it. This is an NC57. This is the antenna section. There's a slug in each one of these coils, but the antenna is trimmed from the front. There's a capacitor. Uh, it's right here. Let me light it up. Right there, that capacitor. Let's see if she's lighting up good. Let's see if she's in the frame. All right, this capacitor right here. All right, when you trim up the radio, you're receiving a station, and you turn the antenna trim. That's the capacitor you turn. Now the function switch or the band switch switches that capacitor, that tuning capacitor that's on the outside of the radio, across each one of these coils, depending on what band you're on. So you don't have to touch that. There's no adjustment. The adjustment is on the front of the radio. All right, now you come to your mixer. Leave it alone. You could turn one of these. First of all, you have to have the 455 aligned. And do you have a way of doing that? So if you tune this, you're not really you're tuning up that one station, and then when you go another place on the dial, you'll have less signal. You think you're making the radio get better, but only on that one station. So you don't touch the mixer until you're sure you have the four. In this case, the radio is a 455 IF. Make sure that's in. Now here's the oscillator section. Each coil has a slug, and when you turn the slug in, the oscillator goes lower in frequency. Then you go to the high end of the band and you adjust one of these capacitors. Now you can see I've cut my nails. I've replaced one of these capacitors. It was shorted. And here's how you tune it up. Let's just say your 455 is good. You find a station, or you use an oscillator. But in my case, I use a station on the bottom end of the AM broadcast dial. And that's the first band you should learn to calibrate. You go to a low frequency station on the bottom of the AM broadcast band, and you put your dial over the mark that would be the station on the dial, and you notice it's a little off. All right, so you put where you're getting the station, all right, on one part of the dial, and where the mark is, and go in between, and you'll have no station. Turn you're at the bottom of the dial. Turn the slug in or out to get the station. Now you go to the high end of the dial and find a station that you know what frequency they're at, and you turn the dial to that. And then in this case, this is the AM broadcast band. You would then adjust this capacitor. You go back and forth until the dial is exact on the bottom end and the top end. And you have to find a station that's like, just say the 600, and there's a line there for 600. Try to find a station that's at 600, or maybe there's a line there for 610. Use that station. And when you get this radio calibrated, it's more accurate than like 1/3 of the. It's dead on the AM broadcast band. Let me just say that. It makes it very easy for DXing. But don't touch the IF cans. Don't touch the mixer. I had a guy I went to rest with, and he was always saying something like, when I tune this up, and I'm like, no, you don't understand. He says, when I tune it up, I get one station, but then I don't get that. I said, listen, it's a compromise. You have to go back and forth between the two stations. Well, when it comes to the mixer now, and you gotta bring the stations up equal, and then check other ones also. But you can touch the oscillator without messing the radio up. Someone can easily come along and help you, and you can actually use a station. But the mixer is more complicated because it's a compromise. and you want it to mix the signals good on the bottom end of the band and on the top end. And if you just go hilly-nilly, whatever, if you go in there and you just start turning stuff, you'll hear it improve. But then when you go to the bottom of the band, or if you're at the bottom, you go to the top, or you're at the top, you go to the bottom. When you go to the other end of the band, you'll notice the stations aren't as strong. And it's a compromise. But don't touch the mixer. Right? You can't screw up the antenna because the tuning capacitor is on the front dial on an NC57. You won't touch the slugs that are in these coils, but because they have not drifted in all the years. This radio is 73 years old. They haven't drifted that much, right? What I did find on this one was the AM broadcast band did not work. One of these, these get silver mica also, and I put a new one in there that I just happen to have. This was a Resurrection radio, but I just wanted to show you some eye candy. These are the coil banks, and on the very first NC57s would be the oscillator mixer coil. They're horizontal, and there's no slug in them. There's no way to calibrate that radio. In other words, it comes calibrated, that's it. And then as they made the same model, they gave you a tuning slug on each coil and a capacitor across it, except for the antenna. The antenna, basically, let me see if this is in frame. Yeah, the antenna is done by the front panel capacitor, and they short out. Go look at that video. The plates short out, and it's from the radio being dropped, and it hits it and breaks it, and that's what will be. These radios have a lot of common problems. Now this was used by a ham operator. He got the go. When a radio gets so bad, you say it gave up the ghost. Well, he worked this radio so much that it gave up the ghost. And I come in here and I did a resurrection, and I used a quarter watt resistors, some in series and some in parallel, to replace the half watt. Since then, I bought assorted half watt resistors. But this radio, everything about this radio says it's worn out. I showed you the tuning section. You'd have to disassemble that and clean it all up, and I'm not in that kind of mood. But what I did was I opened this radio up one more time, and I'm looking at how much work it would be to bring it up to standards, and it's a lot of work. And if like one of these wafer switches or selector switches goes bad, I'm screwed. I'll keep this radio as a parts radio. And I have 2 other radios. I had 4 of these originally. The one with the coils turned sideways that you couldn't cover. I looked over that radio. It had so many things wrong with it, and it was just in really bad shape. And I threw it out. It was tough love. I went out to the garbage can, and I paid probably $85 and plus shipping, and it just wasn't up to snuff. And the guy took some really good pictures, which they always do. And they make sure they don't show you really what's wrong with it. And this radio was the second one I bought, and this was basically I won't say the guy bodged it. I'll just say he used it a lot, and he took it apart a lot. And I found some of the parts that were bad. That he had an IF cam, and he has it marked. It's marked down in there. And what was wrong is he had a shorted capacitor inside the IF can. And that's when I started realizing these IF cans can be repaired very easily. And that's what was wrong with it. You could tell he took this thing apart. He unsoldered things. He took some test points. And not everybody understands that IF can has 2 coils in it, and they're both tunable. Whether you tune the capacitors or you tune the inductors. But this person, it's marked under there. Second IF. He has all kinds of marks under there. He was moving along, and I could tell he knew he had a problem in this IF section. And I immediately popped the top, and I cut 1 lead of each capacitor, and I put my own meter across it. in ohms, and it showed shorted. That's how bad the capacitor was. And then I quickly uh, put another cap in parallel, and the radio came right up, and that was it. But there were so many other resistors she had changed, and this unit came with the wrong regulator tube. And I contacted the guy. He got really nasty, telling me he had the right regulator. I think the regulator. I'm not going to be able to call the number. No, maybe I can. OD 150. Anyway, it's a 150 volt regulator tube that glows, and he had an 85 volt one in there, which was causing the resistor. One of these resistors might have been this one to start smoking. So when he put the radio back together to sell it, he put the wrong regulator tube in, or he kept the regulator tube and put what he had in there. But I recapped this thing. I recapped all the .0, .01s, all the .1s, and then I had to change a few of the picofarad ones up in here. We're still in the frame. Hold on. This cap was bad, and I told you about the 3 capacitors down in the BFO section. They were leaky, and it wouldn't oscillate. And I think that's why he put that other tube in there. I think that's where that 6SJ7 is. It's in the section for the BFO. I think he was trying to have more gain, and maybe it did work for a while. But I knew these radios from way back, and the NC 125 uses disc capacitors, and that's the one I bought from that kid for 20 bucks. And I realized after a while, whenever I'd go with my father to buy something, he was always cheap out. And I took him car shopping with me one time. It was horrible. It was absolutely horrible. I just made like I wasn't interested, and I left. I left him home the next time. But he had a way of doing everything, and it's not my way. And like I said, I would come home with the wrong radio. See, he would go with me and get me to buy the thing he wanted. And he wanted this radio. It was a 4-band Lafayette radio, and I wanted a police radio. And that's what I came back with. Then I went over to my uncle's, and we're trying to tune in Belleville Police on it. And I realized after a while that the radio wasn't working. My radio wasn't working because my uncle had his on, and the oscillator was on, and one of the harmonics was on the frequency I was trying to pick up. And I should have been, I could almost see the Belleville barracks from my uncle's house. And finally I said, unplug your radio. What? Unplug your radio. So he unplugs it, and all of a sudden the police come on. I go, your radio is interfering with mine. And I went over there. He was going to show me. He was going to show me how to tune Belleville in it better than I was tuning it in. It's a piece of shit radio I had. And then I went out and I bought was it a realistic scanner radio? And then that ended up on the refrigerator in the kitchen. And my mother used to listen to Belleville. She grew up in Belleville, and one of the nieces' husband was the cop. And when you heard his voice, you knew it was him, Car 9. And my mother did. And my father would come over and push one of the buttons to get the weather channel. And then he couldn't remember what button he pushed. Night after night after night after night. And I'd come over and I'd unplug. I think it was number 8. You plug it in, it would scan down, it would stop on the weather channel because the weather channel is constantly on. Go over and push the button in, and then readjust the squelch. My mother couldn't adjust the squelch. And they tell you when you look back on your parents, you'll realize how smart they were. No, sorry. I have story after story after story. They weren't that smart, and they thought they were smart, and that's the worst. The worst kind of, you have to work around them all the time. They give you bad advice, and in the later years before they died, I was doing their investments. I kept it real conservative, and they had all kinds of money. Now, after my mother died, my father told me a story. He had money invested in the company, and my mother would lay in bed and worry about that money, losing it. So she pulled it out. Got my father to pull his retirement money out, and then she pissed through it. Yeah, and then my father, my mother's dead, and he's going to retire in like a year, something like that. And he's saying to me, yeah, she just She just went right through that money. Yeah, she was worried about losing it, but she got rid of it. And that's why I tell you, it sounds harsh, but my parents were always making bad mistakes. And a lot of times I started getting involved and getting them out of the messes they were getting in. And every time they had work done on the house by somebody, they'd go for the lowest contractor. He wouldn't come back. He didn't do it right. And, some of the stuff, like I said, thousands of stories. You know, my father would go up, my mother would say she wanted to wash the windows. The windows came out, and he took them out, and somehow he got them in backwards. And when it rained, all the windows the water was just pouring in. And I went up there and realized somehow he managed to put the windows in wrong. And I started doing them the right way, and he's yelling at me. He's getting embarrassed. And I'm like, yeah, I'm going to stand here, and I'm going to watch the water come in my bedroom and soak the rug. Yeah, I'm going to stand here like that. But my mother, when she first got the windows, the first half a year or whatever, she kept cleaning them. Then they never got cleaned ever again. But I've seen so much stuff in my lifetime. It's funny, but it's not funny. I think that's it. All right, that's it. I hope you enjoyed the eye candy. A lot of stuff looks crooked and weird because the guy had took a lot of these parts out, and he was trying to check to find out why he was losing signal. And I found it right away. It was the IF can. I have that buzz it thing. Remember I showed you that. Do I have it underneath? Yeah, I have the buzz it underneath under the radio so it doesn't tip over. Hold on. Oh man, we don't want that to happen. Here's my buzz it. You put it on the volume control and work your way back through the. It's got a blocking oscillator inside. I did a whole video on this thing. There it is there. And I had the original buzz it from ICO when I was in high school. And I fixed everything with it. And that's why I spent years trying to recreate it. I actually did it. I think that's it. All right. That's it.